What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Fantasy Cup with a bit of a mean AAA team where all three Pokemon share the exact same dual typing, but I think this typing might be the best typing for the meta, and with the Ghost typing in particular, it has very neutral play into a lot of Pokemon. I actually gained around 100 ELO with this team, but the matches that I lost were mostly super hard losses where there wasn't an awful lot I could have done differently, but whilst I don't recommend the full trio, you could definitely run two of these Pokemon in an ABB style team, and with a better lead that covers for their weaknesses, I think that team could do really well. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get straight into the question of the day. What do you think is the best dual typing for the Fantasy Cup meta? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I should go into the first battle, leading Shadow Giratina into Giratina Origin form. Now, this is going to be the team that Homesize Henry showcased recently on his channel, featuring Waterfall and Empoleon. I believe the third Pokemon is typically Azumarill. My team has quite a lot of play into this team here, but all I need to do is not bother shielding my Giratina. The opponent is going to overfarm a little bit, which unfortunately means they will reach another Ominous Wind here, and whilst, yes, I could tank this, Dragapult is very glassy, so we do want to preserve, well, we don't want to basically invest both our shields on a Dragapult and then potentially risk just being fully fast with farm down, but so far it does look like it is going to be the Homesize Henry team as they come in with the Azumarill. We land with the Shadow Ball dealing big damage, they full send a Play Rough, but they swap out straight away into Shadow Empoleon. At this point, it's already game over. I can simply shield once with the Dragapult, and they're not even going to reach back-to-back charge moves here, as I can fully Astonish farm them down. I'm now one away from back-to-back Shadow Balls. There is nothing this Azumarill can do, so likely they let the first move go through. Shadow Ball gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I'm going to see Shadow Giratina into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Now, this is a nightmare lead for me. Honestly, my only play is to no shield and hope that Giratina can land an Ancient Power before they farm me down, and I'm just barely able to do so. That is huge for me. You can see, surviving with 1 HP and a Dream, and because they no shield, I've now put them into range where I can just shield once with the Drag Cloak and then go for a full Astonish farm down. They actually go for Drill Run there. I'm not really sure why. Maybe expecting me to try and make a catch or something, not really sure. Either way, they're now going to reveal Azumarill once again. Azumarill is super common, at least in the sort of lower elo ranges. I think I'm around 2400 during these battles, but the opponent overfarms. Massive mistake on their end. Shadow Ball is going to grab the final shield, and now I'm definitely just going to put my faith and a shield into my Dragapult in the end game. The opponent once again running the exact same backline, and again it's going to be an exact copy of the previous game here, as we can just shield once, go for a full Astonish farm down into the Shadow Waterfall Empoleon, again coming out one away from back-to-back Shadow Balls, and again I don't think they shield the first charge move. Shadow Ball gets the one shot, and I'm able to take that game. Now, you might be wondering, why would you run Outrage rather than Breaking Swipe? Well, the answer is I already had Outrage. Honestly, I don't think I threw a single Outrage with either Drag Cloak or the Dragapult, so maybe you could run Breaking Swipe there, just because if you do need to go for a debuff there, then that could be quite helpful, but I think, honestly, having Breaking Swipe might just tempt me to go for a bait unnecessarily when we could just full send a Shadow Ball and then get the one shot. But either way, we're going to see Galarian Weezing, which obviously on paper doesn't seem too good for us, but we do typically resist the charge moves here, as the opponent should be on Overheat and Sludge. We're now going to swap out straight away, and the opponent comes in with a second Fairy type in the form of Azumarill. Of course, Azumarill's super common in this meta, but we can full send the Shadow Ball there. I'm hoping that will put them into range where I can Astonish farm them down. But the opponent going to go for Play Rough. Can we get the full farm down here? Unfortunately, we're not able to do so. I'm forced to throw. Shadow Ball gonna be shielded, but Azumarill has so much HP. It looked like they were at 1 HP, but nope, they actually had a few HP there. So unfortunately, not able to get the KO through the shield either. They come back in with the Weezing, but I'm able to make the catch. The opponent is going to once again full send an Overheat, which would have taken out the Dragapult, but Giratina able to hang on, and it is a lot more bulky, even in his Shadow form, and now able to reach a last second Dragon Claw, and the opponent is just going to concede the match. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Giratina into Grimmsnarl. Okay, so the bad leads just continue for us, and this is as bad as it gets so far. Obviously, a Dark and Fairy type Pokemon. We're going to go for Ancient Power, and we are actually able to connect. That is huge for me. And now I'm going to swap into Drag Cloak, where, of course, Astonish is still resisted, but it is only single resisted, rather than Dragon Breath, which was double resisted. I have to shield once, but I don't want to get, well, I don't want to be all shields down and then allow them to farm me down anyways. So now we're going to come in with the Dragon Bolt. 2 more Astonishes should get the farm down, and let's see what they've got in the back. We do still have some play here, but it really just depends what they've got. Unfortunately, it's going to be Doublade, and there's just not an awful lot I can do here. I'm going to go for Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to grab the first shield. I kind of need to stay in just to deal as much damage as I can with the Astonishes, but they can just farm me down here. The opponent ends up throwing a Sacred Sword for some reason. Doesn't make a difference there. One more Shadow Claw gets the full farm down, and unfortunately, Grimmsnarl in the lead was just way too much for this team to handle, and so we end up losing that game. But into the next battle, GG's to that previous trainer, by the way. We're going to see an Azumarill in the lead. I'm going to swap out into my Dracloak, and I'm going straight for Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It does decent damage, and now the opponent swaps into an Ember Turtonator. Now they go straight for Brutal Swing. That is absolutely fine with me. Of course, that is super effective damage, but I can live that. However, unfortunately, I'm not sure if I can reach another Shadow Ball before they fully farm me down, so I'm not going to allow the farm down, instead swapping straight away back into my Shadow Giratina. They can go for back-to-back Brutal Swings here, but I should be able to live both of these, so I'm not going to bother shielding. They go for Brutal Swing number 2. They swap back into Azumarill, looking to snipe, and honestly, I don't really mind that at all. Play rough, gets the KO, but we've still got both our shields in play. Azumarill, of course, has very minimal fast move pressure, meaning I can go for a 1-shield farm down, come out with so much energy, and I also don't really lose that much HP. So let's see what the opponent wants to do here. They are going to bring in their final Pokemon, and it's going to be a Giratina of their own. Now, the opponent does still have the opportunity to make a catch here. We go for Shadow Ball, but the opponent swaps out way too soon. We didn't have the energy just yet, and as a result, we actually farm down the Turtonator, come out with a Shadow Ball loaded, and the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I see Galarian Weezing in the lead, so not a great matchup for me, and even worse for me as they come in with Alolan Sandslash. Honestly, I need them to no-shield this. Shadow Ball is unfortunately shielded, and at this point, they might be able to go for a full farm down. The opponent doesn't commit to it. However, honestly, I just cannot see a way back for me in this game. Yes, we do have a shield advantage, but they've got 2 very strong answers to me. And whilst I did mention, typically we are going to resist all the charge moves on the Galarian Weezing, Dragapult, even with resisted charge moves, is still going to take a ton of damage. So here, I need to get the farm down, and they live with 1 HP. There's no point shielding. The fact that I had to use a shield there meant that it was already game over, and so I basically just allow them to KO me, and we lose that game. But GG's to our trainer into the next battle. We're going to see Empoleon in the lead, so I'm actually just going to stay in this matchup initially. Drill Peck not really going to deal too much damage here. I'm just going to build up a ton of energy and then swap into my Dracloak. Now, we are going to see a Togekiss coming in, but I can now outpace into a Shadow Ball, so of course, full sending it, and Shadow Ball is not respected. Not really sure why they didn't shield there, but the opponent going to come back in with the Empoleon, and I'm just going to no shield. They go for Hydro Cannon. That does not get the KO. That might have been quite a smart play there, just to get a slight extra energy advantage. But either way, I'm going to come in with the Dragapult, and the opponent reveals their own Dragapult, but they are behind on energy there and on fast move pressure, and so I'm able to fully fast move farm them down, fast move farm down Empoleon as well, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I see Togetic in the lead, so not great for me. I'm going to be swapping out straight away into my Dracloak, and the opponent is going to fire for Charge Move. This is not enough energy for a Dazzling Gleam, so I do no shield, and it is just going to be a Side Shock. They swap into Giratina here, but they're going to no shield a Purified Giratina as well, but I'm able to get a simultaneous KO. However, that doesn't really help me all that much. Honestly, I probably would prefer to grab a shield advantage here, because Togetic is still going to be very problematic for me. And this time around, I will have to shield a Side Shock here, as it would do quite a lot of damage, and it would certainly put me into range where they could fast move farm me down, or potentially just get the KO from this range. But once again, they're going to reveal their final Pokemon is going to be a Doublade, and unfortunately, whilst yes, I've got a lot of energy and I can reach back-to-back Shadow Balls here, we just can't do much with our Giratina, so we're going to go for the Shadow Ball. I'm of course going to have to come in with the Giratina, and the opponent is just so loaded on energy. Now of course, they're going to go for a Gyro Bubble here. I'm hoping the opponent will just stay in and fire off a Sacred Sword, which of course is double resisted. However, I just still don't quite have enough energy here. I expected the opponent to swap back into the Togetic, so I go for Ancient Power. We get the KO, but they can just Shadow Claw farm me down, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Giratina Origin form in the lead once again. So once again, if you see this Pokemon in the lead, it is quite likely to be Azumarill and Empoleon in the back. Not impossible that it would be something different, but that does definitely seem to be the most common pairing with this Pokemon. So either way, I'm happy to no-shield once again, as either the opponent gets outpaced to a Dragon Claw as we beat them by one turn before they get to a Shadow Ball, or they throw straight away and it will just be an Ominous Wind, in which case we can no-shield that. Now this time the opponent actually comes in with the Empoleon just to be nuked by a Shadow Ball there. Let's see, the opponent's now going to reveal their final Pokemon, which is the Azumarill, so that's absolutely fine with me. I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball here. Of course, the opponent could be on Ice Beam. It doesn't seem like that is the most common moveset for this meta, however, so it is likely they go for a Play Rough. Either way, don't really mind. I'm going to no-shield, save both my shields for the Dragapult, and this is going to be game over. Of course, I can just safely shield here. They can swap back into Giratina, but I will be able to fully Astonish farm them down. They recognize that, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Turtonator in the lead. So this is going to be a positive matchup for me. Of course, the opponent could be on Brutal Swing, could be on Dragon Claw. Either way, I don't really mind too much, as I'm dealing quite a lot of fast pressure with the Dragon Breaths. I'm going to go for an Ancient Power, bait there, and I'm able to grab a shield. Also, Ancient Power is super effective, so whilst it probably wouldn't quite KO from that range, it would put them into range where we could farm them down, but the opponent is going to catch an Ancient Power onto Azumarill. Now, this isn't the worst thing ever, as this should hopefully put them into range, but I can go for one Shadow Ball and then fully Astonish farm them down. However, they're not quite in that range just yet, so I'm going to shield this. They full send a Play Rough once again. I'm actually going to farm up to 100 energy before firing off the Shadow Ball. This way, if they want to shield, of course, I'm going to get off 2 Shadow Balls, or if they come back in with a Turtonator, I can go for a Shadow Ball and win CMP. But they're actually going to reveal their final Pokemon, which is going to be an Empoleon. So Shadow Ball is going to grab a shield there. The opponent is going to have to throw a charge move, but I'm actually able to swap out and catch it onto my Shadow Giratina. The opponent goes for Drill Peck there, absolutely fine with me. They're now going to be forced to throw another charge move, as unfortunately they cannot farm me all the way down. They go for Drill Peck number 2. Turtonator has a charge move loaded, so I'm actually going to come in with the Dragapult, force them to snipe me here with likely a Dragon Claw, get the one shot, but now we can just Astonish farm them down. We come out with the Shadow Ball loaded, and that's going to be game over. Of course, Empoleon coming back in, Shadow Ball gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Giratina into a Shadow Garchomp. So this should be a positive matchup for me, assuming I can one-shield farm them all the way down. And it does look quite likely here. So I'm going to shield the first charge move. They bait with a Sand Tomb, which is unfortunate. But even more unfortunate, they actually end up living there and reaching a second charge move just to bait me again. We go for a snipe here. And let's see. The opponent's going to have a Wigglytuff in the back. Unfortunately, there is literally nothing I could do there anyways, but obviously didn't really help my ego that they were able to grab both shields with that Shadow Garchomp first. But yeah, that was the only Wigglytuff I have seen the entire time in this meta, so hopefully you don't see too many of them if you do decide to run a few of these Pokemon. Either way, they're going to come in with a Shadow Empoleon in this battle, and unfortunately, they've put me into range where I can't actually get to 2 Shadow Balls before they fully farm me down. Now, we're just going to sponge some damage here on our Shadow Giratina. The opponent can go for back-to-back Drill Pecks. I don't really mind too much. I'm just going to save my shields for the Dragapult in the endgame. This time they actually go for Hydro Cannon, not really sure why. Either way, don't really care. We're just going to come in, go for that Astonish farm down. They come back in with the Galarian Stunfisk, and I'm going to have to shield here. Of course, I do expect this just to be a Rock Slide, and it is going to be a Rock Slide bait, but that's fine with me. We can now look to overfarm massively and throw just before the next Rock Slide. Shadow Ball coming through is going to grab the final shield. Now, I actually can't remember what they had in the lead, so we're going to shield here as they go for a Rock Slide, and it's going to be Azumarill as their final Pokemon. So at this point, we're going to go for a Shadow Ball here and make a pretty big mistake here. I'm going to try and catch a charge move. However, I swap out assuming they'd beat on Ice Beam. But of course, as I've mentioned already, a lot of Azumarill are on Play Rough and Hydro Pump in this meta, meaning we swap out way too soon there. They literally couldn't have thrown a charge move even if they wanted to, in which case they can fully bubble farm me down. Play Rough gets the KO there, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there is the next battle. We're going to see Azumarill in the lead this time around. We're going to stay in initially with the Giratina, then swap into our Dracloak, and we're met with an opposing Dragapult here. We're going to go straight for the Shadow Ball, grab the shield, and here I could flip switch advantage. I don't really care too much about that. Instead, I'm going to take the shield advantage. They go for a Breaking Swipe. I'm now going to come in with the Giratina and Dragon Breath farm them down. My switch clock is coming up, able to swap out just barely there. Unfortunately, not getting too far ahead on energy, but either way, the opponent going to go for an Ice Beam. They're going to stay in with the Azumarill, and here, I'm just going to continue to overfarm. I recognize that Shadow Ball still won't quite get the KO, so there's no point throwing just yet. Instead, I might as well just farm up to 100 energy, or thereabouts, and then go for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It doesn't quite KO there. They come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Shadow Flygon. And I guess this is a situation where Breaking Swipe would have been quite helpful for me, because Shadow on Shadow Twister is going to hurt. But Twister doesn't quite get the KO there. We can go straight for Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw will, of course, take out the Shadow Flygon, and double resisted damage. Dragon Breath able to farm down the Azumarill just barely, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's upon there into the next battle. I can see Togekiss in the lead, so not a great matchup for me. However, I can afford to stay in this matchup. Again, they're not going for a Dazzling Gleam, so I'm going to no-shield this. Just a Side Shock. I'm now going to go straight for an Ancient Power. If they no-shield this, or honestly, even if they shield here, I probably should just swap out anyways, and they do end up shielding. Then I'm going to swap out into Turtonator, and it looks like they are going to be on Brutal Swing. So, of course, they're going to outpace me. However, I'm just going to shield once, go for 3 more Astonishes, and then full send a Shadow Ball. We put them into range where we don't need to full send an Outrage here. Shadow Ball gets the KO, and let's see, they're going to come in with Empoleon. This time they're on Metal Sound here. Either way, going for another Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect, and it's going to put them into perfect farm down range before they reach a charge move. I swap out, I catch a charge move onto Giratina. However, the opponent does a really nice job of undercharging and just barely missing out on an Ancient Power here, so really good job by the opponent. However, I don't think it will help them enough here, as we can just come in with a Dragapult. There's no point throwing any charge moves at this point. I'm going to shield this. The opponent close to back-to-back charge moves here, but we get off one more Astonish. And that should put them into range where I can farm them down before they farm down my Dracloak. I actually swap out there as, again, they go for the undercharge, but I'm able to take out the Togekiss, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's upon there into the next battle. I can see Goodra in the lead. The opponent's going to safe swap into Zweilous, and I don't really have a great response here. Of course, we're going to have to stay in with the Giratina, as they are going to resist the Astonish and the Shadow Ball damage from my backline. Now, here I've got an important call. Do they bait? I'm going to call a bait, but they full send the Dark Pulse, and that is a huge mistake, because now I'm really going to struggle to fast move farm this thing down. I'm going to shield here. This time they do end up baiting with a Body Slam, and that allows them to reach a last-second move. Is this already a Dark Pulse? Yes, it is, and unfortunately, I'm making all the wrong calls in this battle, and this game is already over. There's not much I can do. They could just shield once, fully Dragon Breath farm me down, and so I concede the match. But GG to a trainer into the next battle. I can see Shadow Empoleon in the lead. They're going to be safe swapping into a Shadow Dragonite, and this is too soon to be anything other than like a Thunder Punch or a Superpower, so I'm going to no-shield this. I think maybe we would have got a simultaneous KO there, so I do swap out there. We bank some energy, and they're going to come in with a Shadow Galarian Weezing. Now, they might be on Brutal Swing. I don't expect it, but I am going to shield anyways, just in case, and it ends up being a Sludge. The fact that I shielded there, means that they will have to throw another charge move, whereas if they went for Sludge there, they could have then just farmed me down and then come out with quite a lot of energy. But Sludge, going to get the KO. We can come in with a Dragapult, and at this point, the opponent's going to be swapping into their final Pokemon, a Shadow Empoleon. But unfortunately, there's not a lot they can do. Shadow Ball is going to get the one-shot. The opponent just going to concede the match. They're maybe expecting a Breaking Swipe bait, but of course, I'm not running it. And into the final battle, I believe, of this video, we're going to leave Shadow Giratina into a Galarian Stunfisk. The opponent's going to be swapping out into Corviknight. Actually, I tell a lie, I don't think this is actually the final battle. I believe there are 2 more battles, but either way, the opponent going to go for an Air Cutter bait. I don't really mind that too much. We can now full send a Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to grab a shield. Now, I should live another Air Cutter. However, can I actually reach another Shadow Ball before they farm me down? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So maybe should have shielded there. Either way, they're going to swap back into their Stunfisk, and now we're going to come in with the Dragapult. Of course, I've got 2 shields here. They very likely just go straight Rock Site in this matchup, recognizing just how glassy we are. However, we're going to go for a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It does big damage. And I realized this is not enough energy for the Earthquake. Rock Slide's still going to do quite a lot of damage there, but I am able to hang on. And let's see, their final Pokemon is going to be Empoleon. But unfortunately, we're not in the best position now, as we've only got our Shadow Giratina. So I'm going to come back in with the Giratina, forced to no-shield this, as of course, they could full send a payback with the Corviknight. But we're going to see the opponent's going to snipe back in with the Corviknight. I'm going to have to shield this, and they do full send here. But now I do have the opportunity to overfarm just a little bit. Going to go for the Ancient Power. Ancient Power! I probably needed a boost there. Either way, we're now going to go for a Dragon Claw. Everything is resisted. Dragon Claw, not enough damage, and unfortunately, I lost track of their energy. The opponent able to reach the Drill Peck, get the KO there. Metal Sound, farm down the Dragapult, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up in there, and going into the real final battle of this video, we're leading into Giratina, so this might end up being the same team that we've seen already a few times, with Azumarill and Empoleon in the back. Either way, again, we're going to no-shield this. We are going to look out for a potential catch from the opponent, but they don't pull off the catch there, so we go for Dragon Claw, grab a shield, and then swap into our Drag Cloak. Of course, again, they will reach a last-second Ominous Wind, but that's okay. I don't mind shielding this, because I assume it is going to be Azumarill and Empoleon in the back, and the opponent is going to think about what to do here, and eventually they are going to come in with that Azumarill. So this time, if they do end up overfarming at all here, then I will reach back-to-back Shadow Balls. So Shadow Ball is going to connect, and the opponent is forced to throw straight away. We're going to no-shield this as they go for a Play Rough. We come in with the Dragapult, and unfortunately can't quite go for a full farm down, but I'm going to swap out, catch the move onto Shadow Giratina, and that should be game over right now, as the opponent reveals they don't actually have Empoleon in the back, but instead it is going to be a Fortress. Regular Fortress, however, so they are fairly bulky here, but I think I should still be able to get the KO with a few more Astonishes and a Shadow Ball. I actually end up no-shielding that first Sand Tomb, realizing if they do end up surviving, getting to the next one, it will do more damage, but they don't. Shadow Ball gets the KO. We Astonish farm down Azumarill, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.